Welcome back to another episode of Capes and Tights. I'm Justin. This is guest co-host Gibran. Graham, how are you, sir?
I'm well.
Yeah, see? Guest co-host. You like that?
It's very fancy.
Yeah, we're trying to we're promoting you as you come on the podcast. Every once in a while, we'll just promote you to a new thing here.
I still feel like I'm a Padawan, but it's okay.
Yeah, you'll get there. It's fine. We're here. Technically, we're recording this way early, but we're in the middle of Star Wars week, or towards the end of Star Wars week here at the podcast. And so Adam is moving, our co-host here. He's moving to Illinois. I didn't know if you knew that yet, but he's moving to Illinois, which is fine because we do most of our podcasting remotely anyway. But we gave him a couple of weeks off. We said, hey, man, take a break, move to Illinois. And so he'll be back here pretty soon, but we thought we'd get you on. Paul Eaton was on as well, doing a Doctor Strange review with us too. And I kind of teased you with that one, didn't I?
Yeah, seriously. I'm like, oh, Doctor Strange. Yeah, let's go. And you're like, oh, wait, no, Paul.
we're going to do solo. But yeah, so we're going to talk solo. I mean, so I watched it again over the weekend for the third time, maybe. I think I saw it once, and then I watched it with my wife, and then I watched it again. And I forgot it actually came out on May 25th, 2018, which would have been 41 years to the date from A New Hope, which is pretty cool. They were supposed to release this year. We're supposed to release Obi-Wan on May 25th, but they moved it to May 27th. Right. But yeah, I think they're trying because right after Obi-Wan, they're doing Miss Marvel, and I think that's going to come out on Wednesdays. And so they think they moved the Star Wars one to Friday, so that'd be Wednesday, Friday instead of 2 episodes on the same day. Because this is the first time they're having 2 different new streaming things come out at the same time. So it was made for almost $300 million, dude.
Yeah.
$300 million.
Being a geek. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The movie, right?
Yeah. It made for $300 million. It is the least profitable movie in Star Wars history because it only made close to $400 million in return. So, but it's also not one. If you look at the reviews online, like the critics, like the critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, it was 69% critics. So it's not the worst rated Star Wars movie either, though. So it's weird. It's weird how it fits in there.
It is. I mean, it comes out at a tough time. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth about the sequel trilogy, and all the problems with the directors with that, and the reception of that, and of course Rogue One is pretty universally loved, so it's tough to hold it up against everything else sometimes.
It is. And what Adam and I, and actually what Paul and I kind of talked about when we did the Doctor Strange one too, is the funny thing about how Rogue One did so well. Why wouldn't you think this one would do just in dollar amount, even if people hated it? Like we saw the effects. We talked earlier in this Star Wars week of episode 1 to episode 2. Episode 1 made like 1.2 billion, and then episode 2 made like 650 million. And I think it's the reactionary of episode 1 that went to people like, oh, episode 1 wasn't what I expected it to be, so I'm not going to go see episode 2 in the theaters. But Rogue One did so well that I thought the following anthology film would do better than 400 million in the box office, but I guess people just didn't. The biggest complaint I think I see is that people wanted Harrison Ford, which obviously is impossible.
Right. What are you going to do? You're going to, just do photo capture kind of stuff. And I mean, it would be terrible. It would be terrible to like de-age him for an entire film.
We just do a 75-year-old Harrison Ford playing a 25-year-old Harrison Ford. No problem. That's fine. Don't worry about it. But I think Alden Ehrenreich I think he looked like a younger Harrison Ford. Like I would believe it. Like if you showed me a picture of him and his mannerisms, I think he did a good enough job to make it his own character, but also give you a nod to what Harrison Ford's Han Solo was.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't find too much fault with his performance of this character. I really can't. All the mannerisms, like you're saying, they're there. The very sort of Han Solo tropes. I mean, it was even written to be like, hey, we know you love Han Solo, we're gonna give you young Han Solo. He did a fantastic job. I really think he just captured the character very well.
So I think that this movie, it was trying to give us the fan service of Han Solo. Oh my gosh, the Han Solo movie. Let's hear about how Han Solo became Han Solo. But it's really not how Han Solo became Han Solo. It's how he met Lando how he met Chewbacca and how he got his things, how he got his blaster, how he got his ship, how he got those things. They really never gave us the actual how Han became Han, not like how he progressed. There was no failures. There was no, like, he was basically, the movie started with him being him. And then at the end of the movie was him being him. And then now we know a portion of Han Solo's life.
Right.
Like, there was no character arc to it to me.
So I mean, okay, Han Solo has been a fan favorite character, obviously, since 1977. He came right on the screen, and like people wanted to emulate him. People wanted to be him. Harrison Ford did it perfectly, right? I mean, I will say, as a kid, I was more a Luke Skywalker kid than a Han Solo kid, but it worked well because all my best friends were like Han Solo kids. So like, I'd be like Luke, they'd be the Han, etc. And we did get quite a bit of like Han Solo backstory fiction in a lot of other media, through the years. I mean, a lot of it is sort of, legends, non-canon at this point. But I mean, early on, there was the Brian Daley trilogy of books that came out in the very early years, which were great. It was, featuring Han and Chewie, and then you got some later stuff, when after the first Zahn trilogy came out, we had this plethora of Star Wars stuff coming. We had a new Han Solo trilogy. We had, other stuff coming in the backstory, when he marries Leia and all this other stuff about his parents. And obviously none of that lasted. You had to, get the new canon coming in. But there's hints of a lot of that written into this. But I mean, for as much fan service as people wanted and then were disappointed in, it's always been there. I mean, people got Han Solo at different times, got some backstory, and it's interesting to see what people, when they see it visually, what they are accepting versus what they accept when it's just in prose or comics or whatever.
It's funny too, because this movie, I mean, to my wife, who's not a huge Star Wars stan, when I said, "Hey, I'm going to watch this weekend, you want to watch with me?" She goes, "Actually, that's one of the better movies to me in the Star Wars universe." And it's like, it's because she has no exterior connection to it. It's like she watches it as a quote unquote solo movie. That puts it in this category where she's like, the action's great, the people are great, some of the jokes are funny, the drama's there. That you have all these people, and she likes Donald Glover, and it's this aspect of the movie has this. If you take these movies and stop comparing them to the rest of the movies that are in the same universe, it's a good movie. It's got a lot of stuff that you'd want in a movie. It's just people are expecting their movie. They're expecting a de-aged Harrison Ford. They're expecting, A New Hope Part B. It's the funniest thing. And so I thought this movie would be well liked and all this. But I also can't see anybody out there really giving me an actual real reason of why the movie wasn't their favorite. Wasn't a good movie. You can't give me a legitimate reason. There's no one out there that can say this is why it wasn't a good movie. It was like I just said, maybe it wasn't a very good character arc because there wasn't this beginning and ending where you kind of saw him grow as a person. But we see him grow in A New Hope, really. That's where you see his change from trying to be selfish and scoundrel to.
Yeah, I mean, the seeds of it are there, in some of the interaction with, the rebellion piece, where they're like, you should do this because this is, why. And then even, even Kira is like, he's a good man. He's gonna make the right choices. I mean, she sees that in him. She knows that ultimately about him, and I think that comes from the part where he obviously cared about her, and he was trying to do the right thing by her various times. But yeah, I mean, the touchstones are there though, right, for the character that we know he becomes. You mentioned the jokes. I mean, there's some like early versions of retro recycled jokes in there. One of my favorites actually is when Donald Glover's Lando says to him, "I hate you," and he says, "I know." It's like, I love that. It's like, okay.
There's a couple of them too. That was it. I don't think this is a good idea, but as the actual line from the original movies, this is a very bad idea. There was like one where they just changed one word in it too. Like they definitely do that, and they have that freedom to do that. They have that Like they almost need to do things like that, which is really good, which is fun because they can like, again, for those who know, you know, but if you don't know, it doesn't take away from the movie. It doesn't make you go, I don't get it. Like there's certain times that we've talked outside the podcast about certain like the addition of Wilson Fisk's character played by what's his face in Hawkeye,
Vincent D'Onofrio.
yes, that's a huge fan service thing, and everybody's all excited about it if you know. Like there's no meaning to it if you don't know that Vincent D'Onofrio has played a Kingpin before in the Netflix. You know, it falls flat to the people who don't know. And so
same with Charlie Cox as Matt
yes,
Murdock. And
yes.
Spider-Man 3, right? Yeah.
If you know, you know. If you don't, then it doesn't make it. You're not excited about it. So, but doesn't take away for some of us, but some of the things can take away from it. This didn't. Those jokes and those things are, you know, the fact that he won, like his showing him win the Millennium Falcon. It's like we know that as Star Wars fans that he won it in a card game, and you're waiting for it. That the entire movie you're waiting for him to win the ship in a card game, and it finally happens towards the end of the movie. You're like, that's how he got the Millennium Falcon. And to me, it was like, cool. I get to see this on. I know how I knew it happened, but I get to see it now on screen. I was excited about that. There was no. It looked like a Star Wars movie to me too. Like it definitely had that practical effect part to it that made it go, okay, this is a Star Wars movie, which I thought was funny. They had to call it Solo: a Star Wars story to let people know that it was a Star Wars movie. Like that was the stupidest thing. I was like, Rogue One is called Rogue One, but I don't think anybody ever, it says a Star Wars story on the poster in small letters, but I don't think people call it Rogue One a Star Wars story. They just call it Rogue One.
You know, when they were shooting the film, the name of it was Red Cup.
Yes.
Solo Red Cup, right?
Yes. I was like, that is awesome. When I read that online, I was like, that is amazing.
Yeah. But in addition to the jokes, you had other things too that were like, you know, all right, we're gonna put the stamp finally on this whole Han shot first thing, and I'm assuming no, you know, spoilers abound in this podcast.
Yes.
But
yes.
You know, when he shoots Beckett at the end, I mean, there's no question about it. He's just like, they start the conversation, boom, you know, done, and it's like, yeah, that's the guy. He's gonna shoot first. You know, let's not argue about that anymore. We know what happened.
And they had the freedom to do that, but the downside to that, having the freedom to do that kind of thing, like going back and like paying it, is that they're stuck in a bubble too. Like they don't have the ability to, like they can't go too far off script because of the fact that there's a movie that follows this that he goes into that you can't be like, oh, he lost an eye, because he has two eyes in A Star Wars: A New Hope. So like you can't do that. But things like that where you can say, no, this is who he is, and this is what you can tell for the future films, and set him up for it, which is awesome. In that scene where he shot, my wife actually made a point. She goes, why did why did Kira have to go back? Like, why did she, you know what I mean? She's now quote unquote free from the syndicate that or the Crimson Dawn, but now she immediately just became in charge, like, of that, like, you know what I mean? Did she immediately just take over for Paul Bettany's character? Like, is that how it works? I mean, is that just like, okay, you killed, the person's dead, now I'm in charge?
I mean, she sets herself up for it. Her character is obviously really smart. I mean, she knows what she's doing. She's gone through things, and we don't even know the stuff that she's gone through. Yeah. You know, but the appearance of Maul, you know, and the whole syndicate, you know, it's interesting. I mean, obviously they set it up for potential sequel material, right? I mean, you know, both Emilia Clarke and Alden Ehrenreich had signed on for 3 films, whether that was 3 solo films or what. They signed on for 3 films. I don't know where their contracts lie at that. They probably dissolved at this point. It's been 4 years, right? But I mean, that potential was there, and it could be, doesn't have to be another solo movie. Didn't have to be a direct sequel. It could be just like, you know, Kira, a Star Wars story.
Yeah, well, call a Crimson Dawn movie would be, or show would be amazing. Something that's like what they kind of, they touched on, obviously, in Book of Boba Fett. Anybody hasn't seen that yet, please go watch see it. But like a little bit of spoilers here. They talk about the syndicates, the Pike syndicates in there, and the Crimson Dawns talked in there, and so on and so forth. So they set that up in a way that, and then obviously the people behind Book of Boba Fett were able to run with it as well, like by picking it up again and talking about these syndicates that are out there. That a Crimson Dawn thing would be awesome. Something to do with Crimson Dawn, just in general as a group. They have the stuff in the comic books right now that's dealing with Crimson Dawn, so why not do something with
The
that.
Boba Fett, the Battle of the Bounty Hunters, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's great, and I think it's all great stuff, and it's stuff you could do that is, excuse me, it's kind of like what Better Call Saul is right now to Breaking Bad, where it's like in the same universe, but they're running parallel to each other to a point where rumors are that the some of the characters are crossing over more at the end of this Better Call Saul run. But it's like they can make another thing. It's happening in the same universe, but it's not connected in any other way. So a Crimson Dawn thing that's not connected to the Skywalkers at all and just does this own thing would be cool, in my opinion. It's another auxiliary thing. It's the, what ifs to the MCU kind of thing. Like it's there, but it's not there kind of thing, which would be kind of cool. And bringing back Emilia Clarke and stuff.
Yeah, I mean the Crime Syndicate stuff is definitely interesting. It's a whole like pool of story just waiting to be told, right? I mean, you've got so much there, but it's that crime element too that is a part of this story that is also so engaging. I mean, I have a friend that likes to just call this the Italian Job in space, and he's right. It is, minus the Mini Coopers.
Yes.
But I mean, it's a caper movie, right? I mean, one after the other, a flubbed caper into the redeeming one, and the double cross and the triple cross. I mean it's all there. And what else would you expect Han Solo to be involved in this time in his life, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly,
right? Yeah, it's good.
The things that made me go, again, as a Star Wars fan, just as quick things to point out for that is the first appearance of Chewie. Like seeing him and him like growling right at Han Solo was amazing. Him getting the blaster, him boarding the Millennium Falcon for the first time, not even being the owner of it yet, just boarding it and getting on it for the first time. You're like, oh man, like those things are like nostalgic to no end. And then the appearance of Darth Maul, that the aged Darth Maul, because he's obviously older. He's got robotic legs in the thing, so obviously knows there's a reason. And as people know on the podcast too, Adam and I talked a little bit here, was Adam and I have not been diving deep into Clone Wars animated show or the movies or anything like that, and so we know that Darth Maul makes more appearances in that side of the Star Wars universe, but once he got cut in half in the prequel series, a trilogy of movies, there was like, that was the end of Darth Maul. And seeing him appear in here gave us all hope of like, oh yeah, we're gonna see more Darth Maul. And then it just fell flat. It just was like, nope, you're all set. You have to go watch Clone Wars to get more Darth Maul. And I'm like, God damn it, I want to see more Darth Maul. I think he's such a badass character. And actually, technically, he's just Maul in this movie too. He's not Darth Maul in this movie.
Right.
But like I think it'd be awesome. So the Crimson Dawn thing with him being the mob boss for the Crimson Dawn and seeing a show surrounded around Darth would be amazing.
Yeah, I agree. There's some interesting things. Did you watch the deleted scenes?
I did not watch the deleted scenes. I always forget to do that.
There's some interesting scenes that they deleted or they extended. Although watching them all, I think the right choice was made. But there's a piece in the sort of extras where they kind of talk about, or there's a round table. This isn't a deleted scene, but there's a round table with Ron Howard as the director and all the principal actors. And they show some really up close pictures of Paul Bettany's face, and you see him in this role, and he was a replacement actually for the original actor that was kind of playing this character, and they redid the whole thing when he couldn't come back for reshoots. But his alien physiology in his face, there are times where you can kind of see it, and there's times where you don't see it as much. And I wish that you could see it more, because it adds to that idea that the races and what is going on with this crime boss, and what is his story. I mean, that's the backstory of all these characters, I think is incredibly interesting. And when you bring it in with like that fervor for more Maul, it's like, all right, so how is that character related to this character? I mean, we don't need the origin story of Beckett, right? I mean, I think we get him, but like the rest of it, I want that story. I want the Star Wars Godfather, for example, right?
And we can get that now with Disney Plus. Like, that's the difference between what we used to be able to have, like back when the prequel series trilogy came out, was like, that was the way we're going to get Star Wars movies, is the big screen. And when we got Rogue One, even in Solo, let's be honest, Gibran, if we went back further, this probably would have been a streaming. I really feel like this would have moved over to Disney Plus and been a series if streaming would have been as big as it was in 2018 as it is in now. Like obviously they were making this movie in production for a while before it released in 2018. But if like in 2022, thinking now with the successful Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and so on, I really think that this, and sadly Rogue One might have been too, but I'm glad Rogue One actually was on the screen because Rogue One was, it might be one of my favorite, if not my favorite Star Wars films other than maybe Empire, but like it's unbelievable. But this probably would have been a cool 6-10 episode series like they're doing with the more on Obi-Wan coming up here pretty soon too.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. They probably would have said, let's just leave it for the Skywalker series, for the big screen. Thank God that's over. But and let's put this other
is it
stuff
though? Is it though?
Oh,
that's Adam and I's whole thing is too. It's like the word Skywalker does not need to be uttered anymore. Like it's fine. We know about it. It's fine. We'll move on. We got other things. The universe moves on. Like at some point, the same thing I've always talked about in the MCU. Iron Man was an Iron Man. Move on. I love Iron Man, but we're done. We're moving on. Next thing. You can reference it off key somewhere in the movies because it makes sense, but you don't need to have like a poster on the wall that says remembering Iron Man anymore. We're done. Moving on from Iron Man. It's funny how many people were connected to this movie at the beginning that would have made me go again in 2018. Oh my gosh, you got to see this movie. Like Lawrence Kasdan and his son Jonathan. I mean, Lawrence wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, Empire Strikes Back. So you're like, oh my gosh, those people writing this movie. Originally, Phil Lord and obviously Christopher Miller were the directors of this movie. Got fired, which is funny because Ron Howard gets all the credit for it, even though the Lord and Miller they basically filmed like 2/3 of the movie before they get fired. But that's a whole other thing. John Williams doing the score again, like it's just with help from John Powell, but like all that stuff made this perfect for a hugely successful Star Wars movie, and for it to only make 400 million, that's the only, but like in the scale of movies nowadays, $400 million in the box office is just it's fascinating. They do seem to introduce in every single new Star Wars movie a new droid though. Did you notice that? Like, I feel like the Rogue One had a new droid in it. This has a new droid in it. Like, it's always a new droid in these movies. Just L337 was amazing. She stole the show, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Stop exploiting droids.
Yeah.
That whole thing is just like we're equals and all that stuff was amazing. I love that aspect of it. It was so good on that as well. I had some fun facts. Let me read a couple fun facts for you. Let's see. Harrison Ford revealed that he's seen the movie, thinks it's phenomenal, but skipped out on the premiere because with the rest of the cast, he didn't want to take any like moments of glory from Alden, which is pretty cool. I like that idea on that one. And the other one was, did you know that this is the first movie in official canon that nobody speaks the word Jedi in Star Wars universe? The word Jedi was never spoken in this movie.
Oh, you're right.
Isn't that crazy? It's fun. And then,
but also makes sense though, right? I mean, given the time period, right? Mm-hmm.
And then there's also another one that was so cool. Oh, also the first and only Star Wars movie so far, or up until this point, I believe, that no C-3PO or R2-D2 were not featured in this movie as well. And then the other one was Chewbacca's. This is actually first lead role. Every other role for Chewbacca in any other movie, he's actually been a secondary character, and because of that, they had 8 production suits and 10 heads for him to use because of how much on-screen time he had, and they didn't want to get too nasty in the suit and they had to clean it and do all that stuff. I thought those were fun facts for the movie because it's a different movie, and that's the thing. It's standalone movie, but it does fit. Like I feel like you can watch it if you're watching episode 1 to episode 9. You throw these movies in. The reason why we did this one above everything else right now, we did episodes 1, 2, and 3 this week solo, and then you can do Rogue One and so on. Like this is the movie that's next in line because this movie does fit into the canon timeline.
Yeah. I believe if memory serves correctly, the first scene that they filmed was the, Chewie Han mud fight scene. Mm-hmm. And actually, I guess it took 3 weeks to film that scene through all the rehearsals and all the takes they had to do. Wow. That's intense.
It is. It makes it also laugh because I was listening to something about Kevin Smith talking about shooting Clerks 3 and he shot the entire Clerks 3 movie that's coming out here pretty soon in a month. And the fact that it took 4 months before Lord and Miller were actually fired from this movie before Ron Howard took over, and the movie wasn't done yet. And the fact that there's a difference in scale between Kevin Smith movies and a Star Wars movie.
Right.
The fact that it took a couple of weeks to shoot that one scene, whereas a couple of weeks into a Kevin Smith movie, they would have been almost done. But yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, so in overall, in the aspect of a solo Star Wars movie, it is a great movie for action and adventure and drama, and there's some comedy in there and stuff, but it's not, you're never going to get, this is the thing that Adam and I talked about episode 1 and episode 2, you're never going to get A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. You're just never going to get that. You can't recreate that. It lives in history. That's where we are. Let's move on. This is a great movie in that sense.
You know, if you think about it, like in the terms of, you know, time travel lore, those are fixed points, right? You can't change them. You can't recreate them. They're fixed points. And you just have to, you know, you build from them. And that's what's always been so great about the Star Wars universe. I mean, whether you love George Lucas or hate him, whether he ruined your childhood or whatever, since, you know, the original trilogy, you know, he did create this vast universe, you know, and allowed other people to play in it as well, you know, and the depth, you know, there's so much that, you know, obviously can be written about it, because we've seen so much already. And, you know, this many years later, people are still playing in that Star Wars sandbox and creating new things. So, you know, yeah, you're not going to get those original movies again exactly as they were, you know, and have that same exact feeling from the very first time you saw them, or when we saw them as kids, or whatever. You have to have that new part of the mythology that needs to wow you. You need to accept it, right?
Yes. And maybe that's why people won't do it the way that George Lucas did it in the first place from now. Like very rarely will this happen where they'll create 3 movies knowing that there's going to be a prequel potentially and a sequel to the same series, because it does put you in some sort of, you know, constraints to what you can and cannot do. You know, they did this kind of in the Marvel thing, and they did it in the wrong way.
Hobbit.
With
Hobbit.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the, you know, and the same thing with putting Black Widow way ahead. It put her in a box in a sense that you couldn't do much because you knew where she was going. So you should have done a Black Widow movie way years ago. That's a whole other conversation. But that there is this aspect of it. We relate to the MCU is like point A to point B. It's a linear line that everything's moving forward. There's a source material that's a very popular source material that people go to all the time, that it frustrates me that the MCU is one world and comic books are another world. They can pull from that, but very rarely have you ever seen a motion picture or TV show based on a book or a comic book that has actually hit every single mark on that comic book or source material. It is ridiculous. I wouldn't want that either. Like the books are books for a reason, right? And then you put it into a movie or a TV show, tweak it a little bit. Make a character that was a female, a male. Make a character that was white, you know, person of color. Like, why not? Like, that's not, you can do that. And so the downside to these movies is there is a thing you have to base it off, and that sucks that you can't change anything. Like, you know, luckily they are adding more characters around Han Solo that didn't need to be. Right. They're not in the future movies, quote unquote, or the past movies that you can just create and then kill, and they don't exist anymore.
Right. I mean, that was the thing, right? Aside from a couple of characters who we obviously knew already, we knew Lando, we knew Han, we knew Chewie, you know, everybody else is basically brand new, right? There's a whole new swath of characters, you know, situations, worlds, you know, names, races, you know, I mean, you know, you have some things that you've heard of, you know, you got Jabba, you know, do they mention Jabba, or they just mention
a crime lord? They mentioned Tatooine and a crime lord of some sort that he wants to go do a job for you.
That you got the Kessel Run, you know, I mean, how many times have we heard about the Kessel Run? What was the Kessel? What was it? You know, and now we know, you know, but other than that, the thing that is different though about Star Wars versus things like MCU is that, you know, the movies in MCU and the comics in the Marvel universe, you know, they run parallel to each other, but they don't intersect, right? Whether you agree with the, you know, the amount of control that, you know, what Lucasfilm to Disney has had on the Star Wars universe, you know, they fit together, you know, I mean, Legends canon stuff aside now. I mean, they did that for a reason. They did that because they wanted it to be something you could, if you enjoyed the movies and you were a first time Star Wars movie viewer, you could go right into the books and you're in that same universe that they're putting up on the screen. And that really works. So many people still are like, oh, they got rid of all the legend stuff. That's awful. And I was like, have you read comics in the last like 60 years? I mean, how many times have we had everything rebooted? Like DC alone. I mean,
yes.
This is old news.
Yes.
I can still enjoy those stories as much as I want to. And, as evidenced by Zahn bringing Thrawn back into, the new canon.
Yep.
It's like, you can take the best of that and you can recreate it and create new stories and go in new directions. And that's awesome.
And it's exciting to me because what I did was, when I was talking to Adam a while ago about how I'm getting like so more in depth into these, I'm reading every Star Wars title that's at Marvel right now in comic books. I'm reading those. You have the Darth Vader, there's the Bounty Hunters, there's Dr. Aphra, the main storyline Star Wars. There was the crossover series, War of the Bounty Hunters. I'm reading all that. It's awesome. And I'm starting to read the fiction, the books, the actual novels that were putting around it. Cause I'm excited but I also know that in my mind is there's movies are one thing, comics are one thing, and books are one thing. There'll be things that are canon and not canon, but they're still giving me what I like. But the main thing I'm going to like the most is your motion pictures and your TV shows that are definitely connected in a way. And if you don't want any of the other stuff, you don't want to watch Clone Wars, then don't watch Clone Wars. You don't have to watch Clone Wars. You can just watch your movies. The TV shows and the movies are the ones that are going to be related the most because they technically are in the same universe. Clone Wars is technically part of it, but it's really like, I don't know. It's weird because it's animation. That's the thing that throws a lot of people off. I think if it wasn't animation, I think it would be so much more in canon for those peripheral Star Wars fans. But because it's an animation and in a unique animation, it's not just like your typical Pixar or Disney animation. It's a very choppy and different animation, which I'm okay with, but it's just different. But Star Wars as a whole, I just dove way more into it in the past 6 to 8 months than I've ever dove into it. I always have loved the Star Wars movies, but the problem is my dad never really was like, oh, we've got to watch the Star Wars movies. It was just like, oh, Star Wars movies are cool and they're on. It wasn't until I was probably like in high school where I was actually like, I got to watch these movies. And I'm like, now I'm like, I can't wait to watch with my son. Like, this is like, yeah.
Right.
So, but luckily we also have a lot more crap around us to occupy us with Star Wars stuff. Like, well,
that's true.
I say crap, but I didn't mean crap, but in the same sense, I also mean crap.
Well, I mean, it's true. The ability to share that Star Wars being generational and multi-generational is I think, is a wonderful thing about it. I mean, I was literally, I was 3 years old when I first saw Star Wars. My mother brought me to the theater. We saw it at Radio City Music Hall in New York City.
There you go.
And do I remember that experience? Of course I don't. Although there are like scenes of that movie that were familiar to me, and I didn't see the actual film on screen until one of the later re-releases.
Yeah.
And definitely before Empire. But I had like, my old Star Wars hardcover storybook from when I was, 4 or 5 years old is like, I still have it and the cover's barely hanging on. And I also was able to listen to when they did the Star Wars radio show. I mean, I was of an age where I could listen to that when it first aired. And it was something that my mother really enjoyed sharing with me, and like, all the Star Wars movies. I think she just had a thing for Harrison Ford, but
who wouldn't though, right? I mean, come on.
Right? Come on. But, my own daughter who, I mean, she'll be 24 this month. But, she had an easy time getting acclimated and wanting to see all the Star Wars movies as soon as she could, because I mean, I've got comics, statues, toys, around the house, so she was familiar with seeing these characters and seeing them come to life on the big screen was fantastic for her. And of course she's now, a lifelong fan. So I love that ability to share this stuff, from generation to generation and have it continue to be new, I mean, for her, going to see the prequels those were her first Star Wars movies on the screen, the big screen, right? So, it was
going into it also, like I'm going to be able to give my son the ability to just make his own judgments, be like, I really like all, and I won't say the first three are the best, then the prequel series are and then the sequel series are whatever. It's gonna be watch this from the beginning. I'm excited to watch it because I'm always excited. I don't care. Adam and I watch episode 1 again, episode 2 again. We're gonna watch episode 3 here. It's not my favorite thing to put on, but it's still Star Wars, and it's still it's still, when you go to watch it, I'm not like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. There's movies I will never watch again. I feel like the Star Wars prequel and sequel trilogies are both movies that I can watch over and over and over again because they're Star Wars. I don't care if they're good or bad. Because they're Star Wars, I can watch them again. And that's a lifesaver to the people who made them, because I own them, and now I'm going to watch them over and over and over again. Disney Plus has my money because of this. And so it's pretty funny on that aspect of it. The MCU connection, though, it's kind of funny. So I was just looking at this. Emilia Clarke's going to be in Secret Invasion. She's been rumored to be in Secret Invasion. Donald Glover was in Spider-Man Homecoming, right? Because he was, Homecoming, because he was in the parking garage when Spider-Man got some information from him or whatever. So Donald Glover was in it. Let's see. Paul Bettany obviously was in MCU. Yeah. Jon Favreau voices Rio Durant, who obviously Jon Favreau, big Marvel person, but also is now in charge of basically Star Wars television. So, and then you have the fun. So then you have, if you go a little bit further, that Woody Harrelson was in Venom too. So there's the Marvel part of it. But it's just kind of funny, the connection to all the small world that those things have. I guess when Disney gets their hold on you, they just keep you, right?
Yeah, I mean, how can these people say no to the kind of money they're probably getting for doing?
When they were growing up and watching Star Wars, I mean, half these people were probably like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a Star Wars film. I don't care what it is, what you need me to do. I want to be in a Star Wars film."
If you watch the extras, there's the round table with Ron Howard and the actors, and he asks them, tell me about when you first heard that you got the role, and who was the first person that you told. Of course, they weren't supposed to tell anybody for weeks, right? And of course they all did. But the actors that have kids, they're like, the first person I told, I couldn't wait to tell my kids, but it's really interesting, hearing them, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a Star Wars movie. It's, I obviously I'll probably never be in that level of anything of some of these actors, but to even be someone who, Emilia Clarke, who is like, at the time, Game of Thrones is like fire, right? And, for her to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in a Star Wars movie, where already she's like known worldwide at this point with Game of Thrones. And she even says that, all of her, fellow cast were like, they were so excited for her, and they were like, they wanted to be in a Star Wars movie too. And I guess Kit from Game of Thrones, he's been trying to like do everything he can to try and get into a Star Wars property, but of course we saw him in Eternals. So hopefully
exactly
as Black Knight again. So
well, I mean, so the connection there between the Marvel and the Star Wars universe now with Jon Favreau. I mean, Jon Favreau is just kicking butt on all of that stuff, and I can't forget David Filoni either. David Filoni is the mastermind behind a lot of the Clone Wars stuff, but also has his finger on the pulse with Mandalorian and Boba Fett and all that stuff as well over at Disney Plus too. But I mean, the future of Star Wars is bright, in my opinion. If we would have had this conversation back episode 8, episode 9 of Star Wars, the future would have been dull or dim for Star Wars fans in the either big screen or small screen area. That there wasn't much. I mean, at that time, the biggest thing to a lot of Star Wars fans was the animated shows that were on TV, not in the theaters. But now the Star Wars, after season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, and after Book of Boba Fett, I've watched Bad Batch. I've liked the Bad Batch series. The animated series is pretty good as well. They're coming up with season 2 of that, with Obi-Wan coming up here pretty soon. The future in Star Wars is bright if they can do things like what they're doing. Obviously, we'll see how this Obi-Wan series compares to a Star Wars story with Solo, and how similar they are in the aspect of focusing on a character we already know. Whereas like Mandalorian was kind of like, most of us it's peripheral. We don't know the story really. And so that's nice about this. And Book of Boba Fett did an okay job. I like the show a lot, but it felt like it was more like Mandalorian season 2.5, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But
it's interesting. I don't think we could see a crossover of any of the solo characters into the Obi-Wan show, because when you see him, you know, in the trailer, when he sees Luke, you know, Luke is too young, I think, for, you know, whatever amount of time that, you know, Han is in the, you know, employ of Jabba. I don't know how long that lasts, you know, up until we see him in A New Hope. But but it also would have been kind of interesting to see that interaction, you know, because, you know, when Kenobi meets Chewie in the cantina and he brings him over to Han, definitely doesn't seem to know Han, but he does seem to know Chewie a little bit, right? There seems like, you know, there's conversation happening, you know, and I don't know if we see that, you know, brief thing about, you know, Yoda on Kashyyyk and stuff like that, and, you know, I don't know how much of that was, you know, Obi-Wan, you know, any backstory there, but like, you know, it would have been interesting if there was some kind of, you know, connection in the Kenobi show, you know, related to maybe a little bit of the Star Wars characters. And maybe we'll see more of, I mean, I feel like we'll see more of Crimson Dawn or something involving the Syndicate in that, especially on Tatooine, where the Hutts have Tatooine at that point, you know. There's got to be some more of that probably coming into the show. I'm excited. I'm really excited for Kenobi, definitely.
I'm absolutely excited for Kenobi. I think it's just cool because I do love Ewan McGregor's acting as Kenobi was one of the highlights, I believe, to the prequel trilogy. In that sense, I really liked him being Obi-Wan Kenobi. I feel like as it grew, like I'm gonna do a special on the podcast where it's just like, who is Obi-Wan, as we get closer to the show, to give you a little backstory of those people who don't know. And I was creating the graphic for it, and I almost put the original Ben Kenobi next to it. I'm like, I don't know. I think Obi-Wan Kenobi now, most people know Obi-Wan Kenobi as Ewan McGregor, and I think that's the cool thing about it, is that he's actually overtaken the original Obi-Wan Kenobi character because he was on screen more. I had more impact, really, if you think about it. I do think it's funny that Obi-Wan Kenobi hides himself as old Ben Kenobi and no one knows. No one can put the pieces together on that one. But,
well, you know, it's like glasses on Clark Kent, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So we have upcoming, we have Mandalorian season 3. Hopefully, I think about the end of the year, they talked about Obi-Wan coming out in the month of May. We've got Andor. That's also supposed to be coming out at some point, maybe this summer. I don't know. This is late 2022 on the internet. That would be a fun one. I really like that one because, again, that's more connected to Rogue One in that sense. Yeah. So we get that. And then I think there's Bad Batch season 2. There's an Ahsoka show coming. The Acolyte is coming as well.
Yeah.
Then there's the talk about Lando and whether or not Donald Glover is actually still connected to that at all. I don't know for sure. And the Rangers of the New Republic is also on the horizon for us. And there's still talk about another movie too, isn't there? There's also talk about Taika Waititi being involved in a new trilogy. Right. There's all these things out there that still no one's said no, they're not happening, but they're still out there. So they're still possible of a new trilogy. I just think they could just do solo and anthology movies for the rest of their time, and I'd be happy with it. You don't need, or to a movie does well, do a sequel to it or whatever, but you don't have to set it up, be like, okay, this is a trilogy. We had the trilogies. We had 9 movies. Let's just do one movie that's really cool about the Star Wars universe, beginning, ending, move on. Take some characters from the TV shows you have, put them into a big screen movie, put them back, do a Marvel Cinematic Universe thing where you can put things back and forth. But I'm ready for some Star Wars movies where I'm excited for one movie and then move on.
It'd be interesting if they followed the MCU model, though, of not in multiple phases, but an entire phase where they did do these individual movies that build up to something, Infinity War, that would be interesting for them to do something like that. That would definitely be a long-term piece, and maybe they could wrap some of the TV stuff into it as well. But that's the thing too, right? I mean, with the streaming available and doing so well, it puts a lot of pressure on the theatrical, right? And that has to hit in a way that Solo didn't hit, for it to be viable for them. I mean, all of that. I mean, I don't know. Well, okay, put it this way. This might be interesting. What if they did a theatrical viewing of the first season of Mandalorian? Would you go?
Yes.
Right? I mean, that would be kind of cool. Why don't they try that a little bit? I mean, obviously we could, but none of us have
Mhm.
seen it on a screen that big, right? Like that would be amazing. We all know we don't care, you
Yes.
know. Give me the popcorn, give me the huge big screen,
Yep.
that would be pretty cool. So I don't know. Maybe there's a hybrid of being able to utilize the streaming stuff in a way on the big screen too.
I don't think they'd have a swing and a miss with the Star Wars stuff. If they're gonna make a movie, I feel like they're gonna have to make it either 100% not connected to the shows in a sense that it's like the High Republic side of it, where it's so far back that it's prequeling everything. It's prequeling the prequels. That it's point where you can't have anybody in the show because it's so far back, and so there can't be any connection. But if you're gonna make a movie that's happening at the same time that the Mandalorian's happening, or that any of these shows are happening, and you don't connect them in a way, that's what DC does wrong, in my opinion, in their movies. And they had a Flash. DC has a Flash that has had 8 seasons of this dude, and you went and hired a guy who allegedly beats up people and yells at people and gets restraining orders, and Ezra Miller. Why wouldn't you just use the guy that was in the TV show? That this is the stuff that like baffles me. And so if they end up putting a Mandalorian period in a movie, it should probably be the Mandalorian from the TV show, and so on. So if you're gonna do a Ahsoka show and then have Ahsoka be in a movie, like have her be from the show in the movie and just make it work that way. Because I don't feel like the House of Mouse is gonna mess that up and do that kind of thing. I think now they've learned. I think once they saw the shows come out and they saw the success of the shows, that they're kind of like stepping back and hitting a kind of a soft reset button on the Star Wars universe to sort of figure out how planning the future and getting Jon Favreau, someone to head it up like Kevin Feige is over at the MCU, like have someone, okay, you're in charge of the TV shows and so on. And I think DC's new CEO is doing something similar to that now. They're talking about, or whatever owns DC, they're talking about finding someone like a Kevin Feige to do it. And I'm afraid that person's James Gunn because I want him to stay over at the Marvel side. But I just, in my mind, I could just picture them being like, James Gunn would be the perfect person to head up the whole department of that stuff. I don't think he would do it because I think he likes making the movies and not being like ahead of something. But they need someone over there to hold the reins in on that DC side of things. So
as long as we don't get any more dance videos. Honestly, that opening of Peacemaker, actually, I crack up and watch it every time.
Did you see someone made a Lego version of it?
No.
Stop motion Lego version. It's unreal. It's I tell you what, if it's one-off series like Peacemaker, do it. If you're now going to try to make that into a like he's going to have multiple seasons and there's multiple spin-offs from it and they're all the same, doesn't work for me. I would love a Taika Waititi directed TV show that was stupidly funny in the Star Wars universe. Like have it be a Cheers style that's in the cantina, right? Right? Just like a bar show, funny, like behind the scenes, maybe sort of like a mockumentary thing where a documentary crew's in there doing something. I don't know. Be fun.
Have you ever read the Tag and Bink Star Wars comics? No. Okay, so these were humor comic Dark Horse days. And they actually filmed for Solo a scene that is it Jonathan Kasdan, the son? He was one of the characters, and somebody else was one of the other characters, and they're in a scene, but they cut that scene and I don't know what they didn't put it online or anything like that. So but that exists. I mean, and it was pretty popular for a while back in the old Dark Horse Star Wars comics days. But you could totally do something, and Waititi's the perfect person to do that.
Perfect person for it. Yeah. He's not he won't go as crazy as James Gunn did with Peacemaker, but he'll go that level above that Thor Ragnarok, which actually is funny. We're recording this in mid-April, and actually I just got an alert on my phone. I know this is already going to be past because this is coming out in May, that they dropped the Thor Love and Thunder trailer while we're recording this. So we're both going to have to get off and watch that. I thought that maybe they'd wait until actually after Multiverse of Madness, because something in Multiverse of Madness is going to affect it. But I guess they're just waiting a little bit. It's now the shortest time between release of a movie and a trailer in the MCU history, but that's pretty cool on that. I still want them to do a damage control show. I think that would be hilarious if just like a fun office workplace comedy that's damage control MCU, them cleaning up after Thor and Hulk destroy a city and so on. But yeah, whatever. We also wanted to do this week, I decided to delay it. We're going to do it this fall, winter-esque, that I think Adam's going to pop on it. Maybe we'll get someone else on it. We'll get you on it. We're going to watch and talk about the infamous Star Wars Holiday Special. I've got it on
Yes.
a thumb drive. So we'll watch that and we'll watch it and we'll talk about it. I almost feel like we should do a live, not live, but like we should all press play at the same time and watch it and do a live commentary on it, almost Mystery Science 3000 style on it. But we'll figure out what we want to do on that. But I think I wanted to do it for the Star Wars week, but I thought it'd be hilarious to do sometime this winter as an episode to just do it and watch it and so on, because I think it's worth doing that too. Because that's basically the beginning of Boba Fett right there.
Yeah,
for the fandom and stuff. So
honestly,
it is funny.
There'll need to be a betting pool on if everyone lasts through the whole
to watch
thing.
the whole thing.
So
yeah.
That's wow.
Well, I feel like that's one of the reasons why you have to watch it at the same time, like live, so that we like are forced to finish watching it. And all of a sudden, I just see Gibran get up and walk out of the room. He's like, "I'm done, guys. I can't do this right now. I'll talk to you guys later." But no, it would be fun to do that. So look forward to that this fall, winter over here at Capes and Tights. But yeah, Star Wars week rolled up with Solo: A Star Wars Story. Or I'm just going to call it Solo, red Solo cup, red plastic cup, whatever it was called. Was it called red cup or red plastic cup?
Like that, yeah.
The secret working title for Solo: A Star Wars movie. Great movie. I think it paid great respect to the characters. I think Alden did a great job as Harrison Ford. As Han Solo and so on. So I'm excited to see anybody else who hasn't seen it or watch it, because like I said, my wife was excited to watch it out of all the Star Wars movies. She liked that one a lot too. So it was really cool to watch it. But I appreciate you coming on and discussing the least profitable Star Wars movie of all time. Well, at least box office dollars. I don't know what the least profitable movie was. It's probably close to it, but it's definitely down there. I mean, it's fascinating that in 2018, this movie made $400 million. And in 1977, a movie made more than that with the cost of tickets. It's fascinating. But now, Rogue One made $1 billion. If you haven't seen
it, watch it. It's fun. It's just fun.
It is. And if you watch it, like I said, as a solo movie, don't think about it or anything. You can think about Han Solo, the character, but just forget the rest of the Skywalker part of it and all that stuff and just watch this as a solo movie. It's if it came out not connected to anything, I think it'd be a great movie. Like if it was a character's name wasn't Han Solo and it was something else, I think it would be like a great movie. I think it would have been reviewed fine. I think people would have gone to see the box office. Too many people connected it to the Harrison Ford's Solo, and you can't because it's a different actor. Like it's a completely different person. But whatever. At least there was no incest in this one, or what Adam and I talked about in the prequel trilogy, where Padme is a predator to Anakin Skywalker. She's a little older than him, buddy. Okay, just saying.
Lots of opinion.
And then there's no incest where it's the Skywalker's siblings are making out. That's the episode here. Gibran, Briar Patch Books, downtown Bangor. You're down there as well. Briar Patch. What's your website?
BriarPatchBooks.com.
Look at that. We went through the entire episode without almost a ringing of a phone, and that just rang. That's pretty cool. BriarPatchBooks.com. Check them out if you're in the Bangor area. This is obviously past it. We had a great time at Bangor Comic-Con, huh? Yeah, so we're that'd be fun. Exciting things happen. No one died. I'm gonna put that out there. Yeah, and I'm excited because guess what? This weekend, this episode comes out in the Multiverse of Madness is in theaters. So Doctor Strange. Exciting to hear what your thoughts are on that when eventually we all see it at some point. But I'm excited to see that. So thanks for coming on, buddy.
You bet. Next time.